Get it, Myles. What a way to start. What a way to start. Honestly, I think we're both just buzzing about the England game and what an outcome. I mean, I'm an old codger. I'm 37, so my memories of England in tournaments are so laced with negativity. Like, my earliest memory is not even qualifying for USA 94. That's how old I am. My best memory is getting knocked out in the semis in Euro 96. And that was bloody heartbreaking. So this is like another level of euphoria, isn't it? How you feeling? Put it into words.
It's a good question. I don't know if I can. Do you know what? It's funny, like all day and all of last night and stuff, people were asking me like, can you believe this? Can you believe this? What are you thinking? And I still haven't really found a way of answering it. And it just feels like something I've never experienced as a football fan. I think, like, as much as I love them, I've had the pleasure of being a Villa fan for my life. And we've had some moments and we've had
a roller coaster in itself.
Some successes and stuff, but nothing on this scale. And when you talk to an older generation, I speak to my granddad and he's seen England win the World Cup and Villa win a European Cup. And those things just seem so distant to me.
Yeah.
As recently as a few years ago. And seeing England get to the semi-final of a World Cup that probably on the day expected them to win was an incredible feeling. But to go one step further than that this year, it's hard to put into words what that means. And I find that really fascinating about football in general, because I know I'm not the only person like that. I've been talking at length with people about how football is one thing that influences people in a way that nothing else can. People 100%. Might enjoy certain kind of music. People might enjoy other sports to a degree, but nothing will have the effect that football has. In the year that we've just had, or the year and a half that we've just had as well, I know it sounds bad and I'm not encouraging anyone to break COVID rules and things, but being in the pub yesterday and having a flipping Blues fan come up to me and go, I hate him, but Grealish is giving me goosebumps. I love him, and hugging me at full time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was the same with Raheem Sterling. It's been so amazing, this tournament. I mean, he's player of the tournament for me so far, but we'll probably talk about that in detail in a bit. But he's a City player, you know. I should hate the guy, but I can't help but love him. And I think the defense is made up of City and United. There's so many things there to be like, this is a different England, isn't it?
But even beyond that, 100%. And that's something that's really lovely to see in the camp. But just on a personal level, and I'm sure you get this too, and so will anyone watching or any football fan anywhere, that the release that England fans felt last night after what has been a really turbulent time outside of football, nothing seemed to matter for a while, and it still kind of doesn't. And just being, so like I said, I went to the pub yesterday with my girlfriend and her dad, and sharing that moment with them even just felt so special. And it's been a rubbish year for so many reasons, for me, for people across England, for people across the world. So to have anything that just kind of gives you that kind of momentary relief even, and think, flipping heck, it's all right, man. And I'm all right with singing It's Coming Home, because it just, I don't know, it felt really, really special last night. Aside from the performances, the players, the game, just what football meant to us last night and will continue to mean until Sunday and even beyond, hopefully. They did so much for us. I feel great right now.
Yeah, perfectly put, mate. I think it summed it up nicely, that, because I was the same. I was watching it with my 10-year-old daughter, who has just started really getting into football this last couple of years. But these Euros, she watched every game with me, and this England game, she was so wrapped up in it. She's going to remember that, and that's just lovely to remember. And I've got to admit, I was a bit emotional at the end. I think a few of us were. It's been that kind of year. So, it's been a euphoric 24 hours, I think, for England fans. And those scenes that we were seeing at the end with the fans singing Sweet Caroline, it's just like a goosebumps moment, wasn't it? It was amazing.
And that was at Wembley.
We've got to try and talk about the football. That's the thing. But, I mean, it's hard to put that away from everything else, isn't it?
That was the atmosphere at Wembley, but that seemed to transcend it everywhere. The pub I was in was bouncing. You walked out into the streets of the area I live in. I live in Birmingham, obviously, and just seeing central Birmingham and everyone around drive around beeping their horns to the tunes of different England chants and things like that. Spirit is taken on by so many. And like you say about your daughter, that's so lovely that this is her paying interest in football for the first time. But there'll be grown adults doing that. my girlfriend knows how much football means to me, and she loves it and goes, "Oh, it's nice." But she shared it with me yesterday. She felt as tense as I did at times. I could tell, and I loved that. I just, it's been a brilliant tournament. No matter what happens on Sunday, I'm so happy with what England have done and what it's meant for us, and it's been a great month. So well done.
I think every team that was involved in the semi-finals can feel a little bit like that. I mean, Denmark, you could see, were devastated because this was a chance for them to sort of match their history. They've won the tournament back in '92, and I think that weight of expectation might have been on them a little bit as well. But that changed the whole psyche of the Danish public back then, and it definitely has now with everything they've been through. Italy as well, reaching the final against Spain. I think apart from actually beating Spain, which is a big deal in itself, the manner in which they did it, their backs were against the wall for large parts of the game. They looked tired, to be honest, and they made it through. But look how much it meant to them. After the wilderness years they've had since missing out on the World Cup in 2018, it's going to be huge for both teams. And I think Sunday is going to be tense. It will be end to end at times. It's going to be exhausting to watch, that's for sure. But I cannot wait. This is what football's all about, isn't it? International football, when it's like this, just takes on like a whole life of its own, doesn't it? The club football just doesn't in some ways.
On one level, I kind of can wait though, because the excitement of a final is great, but the nerves of it are huge. And right now, no one's lost. And I can be okay with that.
You've got to think that like these are two teams banging form as well. But before we talk about the potential matchup between them and the form that they're in, what about the game itself? What did you make of England? Because we went 1-0 down, but I think we kind of needed to go 1-0 down at some point. We needed to have some kind of adversity. I mean, Italy had similar, didn't they, in the Austria game? Although it was much less sort of jeopardy for them to lose a goal at that point because they were ahead. But for England to go 1-0 down at that stage was a real test. And they reacted brilliantly, really, didn't they?
Yeah, this team ticked a lot of boxes with that yesterday. They went the goal down and they had to go through extra time, and we've not had to do that yet. The only thing missing was penalties, and I'm okay with us not going that far. I actually think it was another really smart performance from England. And that seems to have been Southgate's plan all along. And I think he deserves an immense amount of credit as a football manager. I think a lot of people have talked about him as just kind of being a yes man. And we've probably said stuff like that, even on this podcast as early as this tournament. But I think he's shown a lot more tactical nous than people would have given him credit for before that. He seemed to understand his opponent, and he's set up in the correct way again, and he's made the right changes when he needs to. I think it was obvious for England that they had highlighted the physicality and height of Denmark. They weren't lumping crosses into the box with their wide men. Instead, they were trying to play the ball into the box. They were trying to play the intricate passes that got Saka in for the first goal. I kept getting frustrated when Sterling or Saka got the ball on the wing and you looked up and Kane wasn't in the box. But afterwards you think, to be fair, that's not his plan today. What's the point in doing that? What's the point in sticking Kane in the box with 3 6'4" Danish centre-backs? It's just not going to work for you that way. And Southgate clearly told them that. It was obvious. They didn't try it at all. The only time they ever really tried it was set pieces where you kind of have to almost. It is going to be worth a shot. I think you're right. I think we benefited in a weird way from going 1-0 down when we did and in the manner we did. It was a free kick. It was a wonderful free kick. Maybe it's harsh to say Pickford could have done a bit better. I don't even think it's that he could have done better in terms of people are saying, if he's taller, he gets to it. And that is probably true. But also he does react quite late. I know he sees
it slow motion though. That's the thing. Everything in slow-mo looks a lot worse than it is. But in real time, he only sees it late because he's checking out his field of vision and he literally can't see where the ball is until it's over that defender's head, whoever that might have been. The frustrating thing is as well, that free kick was conceded by Luke Shaw in such a cynical man. He didn't need to give it away. He was holding on to a player when their previous free kick was being taken. So that was really frustrating. I get why he was doing it. It was, if you get caught doing that.
Yeah, but if that's in the box, it's not given. Let's be 100% honest. I don't think it's given if it's in the box. Denmark had that plan where they basically crowded everyone into a really, really tight space, and England tried to mark within that space. Now, when you've got that many people in a space, the contact Shaw made with him was so minimal. And I did think people are complaining about whether it was a penalty or not for Kane's goal. But I looked at that free kick and thought, come on, like really? Yeah, it's probably silly to put your hands on your man. There was such little. I thought it was so soft. So
it was soft, but yeah, like I say, it was a cynical thing for Luke Shaw to do. I think he knew if he was going to get caught, that was going to be flagged, and it was. But yeah, on the balance of things, that free kick, our penalty, were both equally kind of quite flimsy decisions to make, really, weren't they?
I'm sure we'll come to the penalty when we get a bit later in the game. But I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is up until that point as well, the first 10 minutes in particular, England looked fantastic. They would just look like they were controlling the game at will. And Denmark massively grew into it and got back into it. And it was scary at times.
You know what? It felt like a Premier League game for me. It felt like something in the Premier League. It was physical. It was fast. I mean, a lot of those players are Premier League players anyway in the Denmark squad. And you could kind of tell they matched the English style quite well, I thought. And it felt like a sort of mid-table Premier League team against the top 6 Premier League team battling it out. A massive difference in like valuations of the players, but you wouldn't have known on the day because anyone could have won it. And that's testament to Denmark, really. I thought they really raised themselves, like they have done all tournament, really, and brought a proper game to England and challenged them really well.
Some of their players deserve an immense amount of credit. And I think actually the one who I thought I noticed playing very well was Braithwaite. I think Maguire and Stones have been unbelievable this tournament. I think they've been so good and showed exactly the kind of form you expect of them, especially in an England shirt. But Braithwaite gave Maguire a hard game. Maguire dealt with it, but I thought Braithwaite played really well. I think Damsgaard looked really threatening at times as well, the way that he broke through. And there was a period towards the end of the first half where I was nervous. I'm glad that England got the goal as quickly as they did in response. They probably could have had one even quicker. I think Sterling
won before half time, though. I think that was the important thing.
Yeah, exactly. If they go in 1-0 down at half time, all of a sudden you have a very difficult second half trying to break them down twice. And I think they timed it well, which you said in the Ukraine game too. They timed their goals right. So that's nice to see. Sterling should score when he goes through and Schmeichel makes the save. I don't even think it's a save. He just kicks it straight at him. He makes himself play it.
Yeah, I mean, he just needs to pick a corner, really, doesn't he? And I think looking back at that, he'll think to himself, that's a missed opportunity for me to add to my tally. But I can't criticise Raheem Sterling.
No.
Everywhere. He kept running. And when he brought Grealish off, I thought maybe he was going to take off Sterling from fatigue. But no, he actually encouraged Sterling. You could see him have a word. Keep running. These are tired Denmark players. And deep into the game, deep into extra time, when we were holding that lead, he kept running. He kept running at them, into the corners. Immense player. And I'm just proud of players like him and what they've brought to themselves into this game and to the England national team. There's still a lot of criticisms of England. I don't know if you've read from sort of countries commentating on the Euros that aren't England, but we're seen in still a fairly negative light and we're playing conservative football still. But I think the way we played out the game against Denmark was like we were an elite team and had been for years, but we haven't. Even 3 years ago at 2018, we were scrapping through to the semis. We deserve to be where we are now. And I think every player that played contributed fantastically, even those that came on. You could see the reason behind the substitutions. We could see that Denmark were getting leggy. And let's face it, when the opposition's getting leggy, we said this pre-tournament, you don't want to see the likes of Grealish coming off the bench or Phil Foden coming off the bench with fresh legs. They're terrifying, aren't they, for defences? And I think the amount of chances we created was a testament to that. We were always involved and always in the final third.
I think the only thing that worries me now is Sterling ran so much for 120 minutes and he has all tournament. He's been so lively and that's really nice to see. But I hope he's not burnt himself out before Sunday because we're going to need him.
Be on adrenaline to do anything, mate. I think he'll just be on pure adrenaline at the minute.
I hope so. But I think, if he scores there, great. But it didn't seem to matter because he was still making that run. Denmark really struggled to pick that up in the first half in particular. Sterling was starting on the left deep and sprinting down the middle. And they just could not pick that run up because their backline is big, it's physical, it's not fast. So as long as he gets away from whoever's playing wing back, he kept getting through. And we saw also, I still moan about it a bit, but we saw the benefit of Kane dropping deeper as well in this game because the ball he plays for the first goal is unbelievable. There's no one else in the team that can play that pass. I honestly don't think that. I think that midfield struggled in the first half in particular. We were completely outrun by Denmark's midfield. Mount was anonymous in the first half, and Phillips and Rice kept misplacing all their passes and seemed tired at times.
I think they were
just
surprised, though. I think they caught England by surprise
Yeah, I
by
do.
their energy levels. And I'm not saying they underestimated them, but again, like I say, it felt like a Premier League game. And I don't think they expected the intensity that Denmark brought. But you're right about Harry Kane. He didn't need to be in the centre forward position, really. He was linking play brilliantly. And he played like a captain as well. He did. He was spurring on his teammates. And yeah, the vision to find, I think it was Saka, wasn't it, who got into some great positions, was incredible. I'm gutted that Sterling didn't turn the ball in and it was an own goal. I really am. Because own goals, like, he's got 11 own goals at the tournament this season, which is mad. And another Sterling one would have been great. But when that ball went in, what massive relief, you know.
Oh, euphoria. It was incredible. And like you say, like, to get the goal before halftime, you could see what it meant to the England players as well. It lifted them. And they thought, okay, we're not out of this. It's how many times you've seen England go behind in the past and their heads go, oh, can't deal with this. I'm going to be ridiculed and I'm never going to play for my country again. They feel safe and they feel able to express themselves. And that's such a wonderful thing. And you get a 19-year-old lad like Saka making a run like that, like fantastic. I was nervous when he went through because it took him a long time to look up. And I didn't know whether he knew Sterling was there. And I was screaming, look up, look up. And when he squares that ball, it's brilliant. And it's another one where both of the goals, I celebrated each replay as well. It meant that much. You knew the ball had got in, but you celebrated it like, oh, it's
I think that's probably out of disbelief that we'd actually scored so comfortably because we wanted a goal before half time. In years gone by, that probably wouldn't have come. We'd have had to hang on and try and pull 2 goals back in the second half. But no, we did it the easy way, equalised when we should have done. And that is something we're not used to, isn't it? And we said this about the last game and the Germany game. What is this England side? You know, it's unrecognisable from the mentality we've seen in the past, and what a refreshing change. You know, it's and just a word for the last 2 minutes of sort of extra time when we were olaying the ball around the pitch in complete control. That has got to be one of the best 2 minutes of football I've seen England play. They were in cruise control, no panic, no hoofing it long. Incredible. It's just unrecognisable from what I'm used to.
That last 2 minutes was hilarious as well because it seemed like everyone had the same idea of what to do, just play the ball around, take their time. But you could see Sterling kind of had his eyes on, I could do another goal here. You know?
I think so,
He really fancied it, didn't he? But no, I think the first half, I think England probably edged, although there were scares. The second half, Denmark's main threat seemed to come from the fact they were able to counter really quickly, which I did not expect from them, really. Maybe that's just my naivety to what Denmark are like. But England seemed to really take control at times, and I thought that they shone. I think players got into the game a little bit more. I still think Mount was very, very quiet. I don't think we have this tournament seen Mason Mount be Mason Mount yet. No. But I thought they looked a lot more positive at times. Kane was picking up the ball in better areas as well at times. They were getting forward. Luke Shaw was getting it forward more. A massive shout out for Kyle Walker, by the way. He is having such a good tournament. There's no surprise because he's a fantastic right back. But his recovery and his defensive capabilities and his motivation to drive forward at times where England were looking a bit like, okay, we're a bit slow down the ball. He'd go, no, come on, give me the ball. He's off. And I love that. I think he had a great game. I think
that security as well for the 2 centre backs, knowing that he can recover. For example, if Maguire goes on one of his surgeon runs forward, Kyle Walker's going to catch up with most centre forwards, isn't he? His pace is unreal. His stamina is unreal. I think Southgate likes that security. And I've got to admit, if I saw somebody like Kieran Trippier there now as the starter, or even Trent Alexander-Arnold, remember him? If he started for England at right back now, I'm not sure he'd be able to have that kind of recovery the same way as Kyle Walker does. It's unique to him. I don't know any other player like him. And what an asset for the team, you know? What a level of security for the defence to have. But Mason Mount, you're right. He's kind of waiting to hit top form still. I don't think we'll see it in the final even. I think he's still not quite there yet. And I think missing those games, unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, has kind of halted his progress a little bit. But, you know, the players that stepped in, it was seamless, wasn't it? I think anyone that stepped in for him in the meantime has blended in brilliantly. And that, for me, is like one of the main shining lights of the Gareth Southgate squad at the minute. You're playing like for like players. When you take one player off, the player that's replacing them is as good as the quality level as the play that's coming off. So it feels like just freshening things up. That's literally it.
I think the other thing as well with Walker in particular is that leadership and that confidence as well. The amount of times you see him rely on the fact the ball is going to run out, and another defender you think would make a quick or panic decision and knock it into the wrong area or something. He's quite comfortable letting the ball roll across his body. And he knows there's a player there, but he knows he's got the capability of shielding out. Or he'll chest it back to the keeper at an awkward height. And he just looks like he's like, yeah, I've got this. Don't worry. And that does fill you with confidence as a fan, but also as a teammate, I imagine. I think he's been fantastic. But that second half, I think there was a lot to enjoy. England racked up about 20 attempts on goal by the end of the game. Yeah. And I think when Grealish came on, I thought it was really positive as well. I think his movement was good, and I think that they had a good influence on it. I think people will talk heavily about whether Sterling actually was fouled or not for the penalty, but I still now cannot understand why Kane doesn't get a penalty earlier in the game.
Oh, yeah, on the edge of the box, wasn't it? It was just running into the box. There was definite contact. Even in slow motion, it looked actually worse. But in real time, I think I was straight away, that's a penalty. Even as a biased England fan, that taken away, I thought it was a penalty. And it doesn't matter how many times I replayed it. Even the referee commentated on the game was saying, yeah, I think that's going to go to VAR and be a penalty. No,
I couldn't believe it wasn't. As soon as the ref said no, I turned to Naya and her dad and said, oh, don't worry about it. VAR's got that one all day. That one's obvious. Because he plays the ball forward. The defender's foot comes across between the forward and the ball and just completely took Kane's ankle. I've watched, like you, every time I watched it, I thought it was a penalty more than the last time I watched it. Yeah. And it wasn't given. So people can complain about the Sterling one all they like. Really, it shouldn't have even gone to extra time in my mind. But when it did, I was worried by the fact that Southgate still wasn't making changes. It felt like watching Solskjaer. Like, he just did not want to make a sub. Grealish was the only one who came on in the 90 minutes. And actually, didn't really need to. England had the energy. The only thing I would say is, I know maybe it's naive of me to think, oh, we would have got through it anyway. But with the quality we've got in that squad, I wouldn't have wanted to burn anyone out in case we got to the final on Sunday. So Southgate's done really well at keeping that squad fresh. I would have probably made more changes earlier, but hey ho, doesn't matter. He got it done. And then in extra time, they were relentless, particularly the first 15. They deserved it. They deserved the goal, whether you think it was a penalty or not. Yeah, Sterling looked so lively. I think there was contact on Sterling twice in that move. He got
knocked off his stride first of all, and then got clattered into on his way down as well. And he was through on goal. The ball wasn't going out of play. I think he would have had a narrow angle to deal with, but he was through on goal. So there's a case for there being a card there as well. I don't think there was. So that's a bit mad. But either way, it was a clear penalty, I think. When you slow it down. In real time, I wasn't sure. It was harsh. I'll be honest, if it was given against England, you'd be looking for contact and thinking it's minimal at best. But contact is contact, and there was some there. And the way Sterling plays, and I think it's the same when Grealish got involved and when Foden got involved, they were encouraged to get into the box and tiptoe around the defenders because they knew that 1 foot out would lead to a penalty. And it took a little motion like Sterling going through and being knocked twice, like we said, for that to happen. So I think that was an instruction from Southgate for those players to kind of dance into the box, if you like, and it worked. It was great to watch. What did you think when the penalty was given? What was the first thing that went through your mind? I imagine it was exactly the same thing that went through mine. When they actually awarded it, you mean? Yeah. I honestly thought they'd overturn it. I thought that. Did you? Yeah, I honestly thought that'd be. Yeah, they've decided there's no contact or it's minimal contact or the referee's made a clear and obvious error. But that's the thing about VAR. You have to prove that there is a clear and obvious error, and you really couldn't with the replay. So the penalty stood. Why? What was your thoughts? I was never more convinced that a penalty was going to be scored in my life. Oh, really? Yeah. I just thought Kasper Schmeichel was so fantastic on the night that it felt like he was going to save it for me. But even the fact that it parried into Kane's path was just destiny almost, wasn't it? It was meant to be. But what a relief that was. I was celebrating the penalty being awarded like it was the goal, to be honest, because it meant so much at that moment. And also, I turned to Darren and said, Harry Kane is the best penalty taker I've ever seen. I think he's unbelievable at penalties.
this is fine. And also, you and I have been there in person and seen Harry Kane score a lot of goals against Kasper Schmeichel before. So I just thought he'd have the edge. I just thought there's no way he's saving this. The moment between the save and Kane getting the rebound was one of the worst feelings I've ever had. And I'm very glad it disappeared so quickly. And he did very well.
There's reaction videos around the country of fans watching that penalty. You can see them go, "Oh no," and then a euphoric tears straight after it, because it was just a huge relief, wasn't it?
We're fortunate that it was Kane, and Kane has the instincts and the movement that he does. I do think a lesser striker isn't as quick to react. Schmeichel is really unfortunate because it's a good save, but it's not a great penalty, and he just happens to push it in the wrong direction. But Kane didn't stop, and I'm glad of that, because I hate to pick on him, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a bit later. But if that was, say, Morata, I don't know if he would have had the nous to follow it up like that as well as Kane did. And also the finish was really nice from Kane. He did everything he needed to. He kept calm.
Yeah.
He didn't panic and smack it back at Schmeichel or anything. He almost didn't look at the goal when he put it in. He knew what he was doing.
But maybe that's the time that we've got Harry Kane back, you know. I mean, he had a dry spell. We call it a dry spell. It was the group stages. But as soon as you could see that spark return, instances like that became the norm again. And that's the Harry Kane, the clinical, dead-eye finisher that we were expecting to see from the start. He's made a late entry into the competition, but blimey, he's announced himself, hasn't he, massively. And you know what? He could score a couple in the final, conceivably, and get the golden boot as well at this rate.
Yeah. No matter what the result is, if he scores one goal in the final, that's back-to-back tournaments that he's top scorer. Plus, he was top scorer in the Premier League and the top assist maker. That is unbelievable. To have that at the front of your attack is fantastic. And he hasn't looked fully fit either this tournament, I don't think. He's looked a bit leggy. He's not looked particularly quick, but like you said, he seemed like the leader in this game. And I think he did what he needed to do. And it might not have been through the penalty, but I'm glad that, again, England players of the past might not have had the positivity to just pounce on it like he did. And once that was in, you knew England were going to win. And I've never had that. I've never felt no fear. And I honestly thought, well, that's it. Denmark won't score now. They just won't. Even the fact they did score once in this game, it still wasn't a goal from open play. It still took a marvellous set piece to break England's defence. Harry Maguire and John Stones, they controlled it, really. And Pickford even. He had a couple of moments. And the first 15 minutes, he was scaring the life out of me. When he rolled the ball straight out to one of them, I thought, we're in for a long evening. But I think he had a good game all in all when he made some good saves.
There were a couple of nervy moments. And I think I heard a few people saying that they were waiting for that Jordan Pickford moment that he was kind of becoming a bit known for. He's had a couple of mistakes in him on what, to be fair, has been a very sort of consistent, successful career overall. But people look at the mistakes, don't they? And I did wonder whether his mindset had changed a little bit, maybe. But it appears that he recollected himself pretty well. And I think that's probably maybe a word from Gareth Southgate at half-time, just to say, come on, Jordan, you've got this, sort yourself out. But either way, the whole team seemed to recollect themselves overall, I think, whenever any kind of wave of attack came. And the Danes had maybe like a 5-10 minute spell, didn't they, where it looked like they could get something. But we kept them at bay somehow. But I think that kind of adversity and overcoming it in the way we did gives me more confidence in a game like Italy might bring to us, you know. I'm going to say before, I mean, you might want to wrap up on England, but we'll go on to Italy next if you like. But have you got anything else to add about England, to be fair?
Yeah, just on that notion of control as well. The second half of extra time was outstanding football, really. I was fuming as soon as I saw the board go up and saw number 7 on it. And I thought, I can't believe he's doing this. Why is he taking Jack off? Just take Sterling off because he's been on all game. And actually, he was, again... Stop questioning Southgate. He's got every decision right. He has. Sterling was brilliant in the second half of extra time because he kept that challenge on Denmark. Denmark looked shattered, didn't they? That second half, they just looked so tired, and his energy killed him off. The defense controlled it, and like you were talking about, that passage where they were just playing the ball around for fun until Calvin Phillips kicked it out for a throw-in, which was horrible. They were fantastic.
It was glorious.
That final whistle, man, we've talked about it already, but that feeling, bring on Sunday and just let's all hope for the best, man. A fantastic performance. I'm very, very proud of them. They've had a great tournament. we're proud,
about
right?
now, I feel a bit sick to my stomach, because I think
Oh, yeah.
we're going to be in knots watching it. I just hope the players don't feel that as well, because there'll be so much like expectation on them. Probably similar to Italy, but I think when you're thinking it's 55 years since England have won a major tournament or even got to the final, it becomes a lot more real and it becomes bigger. For all the talk of football coming home, this is it now. This is a one-game shootout to lift the trophy. And that is terrifying, but exhilarating in the same way, I don't know how I'm going to overcome that feeling on Sunday, but I think the players will hold it together better than we will, definitely. I think the amount of players in that team that are quite streetwise now. You talked about Kyle Walker. You want him on your side in a game like this, But even Jordan Pickford, to an extent, has been through the mill after the World Cup. He had a few kind of moments in his career. The Liverpool game with Van Dijk, he overcame that. So he's mentally stronger than we know. We've got Jordan Henderson in reserve, for God's sake. I mean, we slated him being in the squad, but I think he made a difference when he came on. I really do. And I think he's another streetwise player that I think now he's coming to some kind of fitness you'd want on your side, definitely.
He was oddly in my mind in the 90 minutes because I thought Rice and Phillips were struggling a little bit. And I did think now might be the time for Henderson. I wouldn't have brought him on in extra time, though, with the fear of penalties coming.
That's true, yeah.
But no, he did what he needed to do, I suppose. But you talk about mental strength and having someone like Kyle Walker and Jordan Pickford and that to lead you on. I'm sure we're going to talk about it now, but Italy have got a bit of their own mental strength at the back, haven't they?
You teed me up nicely there, mate. Yeah, I'm going to give you the spotlight now because I want to know your take on Italy from what they've been through. The group stages were just so impressive, I think, to the amount of people who hadn't seen them close up until now, because let's face it, they've been in the football wilderness really on the big stage for a long time. They came back and announced themselves as favourites potentially quite quickly. The knockouts have provided a few challenges for them. They've lost Spinazzola, which was a massive loss. You could see that void in the defence. But they came through and they looked streetwise when against the Spain team that surprised all of us, I think, in how well they adapted themselves to the game. Their backs were against the wall for a while. They were against the ropes for large periods. They didn't have much possession. But when it came to it, they came good. So what do we make of Italy now? What's your thoughts? Have you changed your opinion on who's going to win the whole thing?
I'm not talking about that. Not answering that question today.
Okay, well.
I think, and it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I'll explain. The two best teams in the tournament are in the final. You see with knockout football quite often that you can have a bad game and you can be affected by something and fall short. And that hasn't happened with Italy. I've noticed that even, like you say, they were blistering in the group stage and everyone paid attention to it. The Austria game, they struggled more at times, but they came through it. Belgium were a really tough opponent, but they played fantastically and got through it. And this was actually, ironically, Spain's best performance, in my opinion, in many ways. This was a fantastic game of football. One of the best games we've seen in the tournament quite comfortably. But again, Italy found their way, and it was a different way to what they've needed. But as soon as it went to penalties, you knew Italy were going to win. I think the narrative was there. But before, I'm sure we'll talk about the penalties quite a lot because it was such an interesting spectacle. But the game itself was amazing. It's exactly what you want from knockout football. And you touched on it earlier. The rivalry between those two teams is huge. And I think their record is identical in their history as well. I think they've both won 11 games against each other. And I think they'd drawn 16 before this game. And then obviously this one was a draw that went through to penalties. So it's such a tense rivalry. And over the last few years, you'd say Spain have been the bigger of the two sides. So it's a massive thing for Italy. They'll have had the 4-0 loss in their minds at the Euros a few years back. And Spain really tested them. Spain were the better side quite often through the game. And there were some players in that Spain side that really, really shone. Young Pedri looks fantastic, doesn't he? He looks like someone who'll be in that Spain midfield for a really, really long time.
Although there's talk of him going to the Olympics with the Spanish team as well.
Yeah.
For a player that's played, 70 plus games this season at 18, I'm worried about his burnout. But he is that kind of important player, though, isn't he? He's 18 years old and he's playing that kind of game. And I thought Olmo was another player that really impressed me.
Olmo was great.
They look like sort of vintage Spain at times, the way they were sort of passing. But again, the trouble with them is that they come to the the finishing it off and that killer blow. And although, to be fair, Alvaro Morata's finish was fantastic.
Lovely.
To actually get the goal.
He's got that in his locker, and that's why Morata still gets picked for Spain and for Juventus or Madrid or any of the big teams he's played for. He's inconsistent, but he's got some brilliant touches in him and some good finishing every now and again. And he showed that in this game, but he also showed the worst of his game in this game. There were other chances that he probably should have buried too.
Well, you say that, but was it Orizabal who had that glancing head?
Oh,
he should have buried that, really. That could have been a different story if he had. That was the chance, I think, of that game. And if he'd have scored that header, it would have been a real challenge for Italy to try and overcome. But when Morata came on, because he didn't start, did he?
No.
He was a threat, to be fair. And they struggled to deal with him. And I think that goal was testament to that. And I think I saw a list recently of players with the most money spent on them in transfer fees in history. And he's in the top 10 somewhere, isn't he? Which is insane.
He's Spain's top scorer at European competitions now as well.
Wow.
Yeah. And you wouldn't expect that either. But he's such a funny player, Morata. And again, we'll talk about it in a bit more depth when we get to the penalties, I'm sure. But it was just obvious what was going to happen, wasn't it? But I think the player that I wanted to just shout out quickly, because you asked me about Italy, was Federico Chiesa. Because he's someone that we talked about before the tournament as someone who could be really influential. And he didn't start for the first 2 games, and he's grown into the tournament and he's become undroppable. And his goal was fantastic. He took it so well. Lightning quick counter-attack and a wonderful finish. And you're right. I do think that obviously Spinazzola is going to be a miss because he's probably one of the players of the tournament. But I thought Emerson slotted in really, really well, actually. I think he did a really good job. It wasn't quite at the elite level that Spinazzola has been at this tournament, but I think he put in a good performance. And Italy across the pitch have just had a lot of players who have clicked at the right times. And
that's true.
The one that really deserves credit for the whole tournament is Jorginho. He's someone that has been ridiculed in this country a little bit because he's not the fastest player, he's not the most glamorous, but he controls football matches. And he found this match the most difficult because Busquets was fantastic, Pedri was everywhere, but he still had that mind, that awareness of what's going on around him. And his passing ability is brilliant, and he recycles play so well and creates things so well that I think he's criminally underrated. There was talk last summer that Chelsea were ready to sell him to Arsenal. Now you cannot imagine that sale being commissioned now because I think he's brilliant, Jorginho, and I'm really happy for him that people are going, wow, he's had a good tournament. But he's won a Champions League this year, and he's now in a European Cup final with his national side too. That's amazing. What a wonderful year he's had. And I think that Italy team, they were under the cosh a little bit at times, but they just looked so efficient. A bit like England. They've played their way through the tournament logically. And we've seen more attacking-minded football from them in the group stage. Then we've seen the pragmatic Italy that we're kind of used to at times as well. But the thing with this side is, they can do both. That's frightening in a knockout competition.
I think the difference between the two sides was Chiellini and Bonucci, who gave it the license to go forward on the counters, and they were really good on the counter. And you talk about the goal for Chiesa. I would counter that with, can you imagine if it was Sergio Ramos there instead? He would not have let that happen to him, I don't think, because was it Eric Garcia was on the pitch at the time? Who, let's face it, has not played many minutes of football in the last year. It's a really strange one to start. I thought, did he drop Pau Torres in place? That was a bit of a strange one. So I think he should have done better, I think, in containing it. We knew what he was going to do as soon as he had the ball. He put it on his favoured foot, had an acre of space around him, and finished it beautifully, you're right? So good. But I don't think Sergio Ramos is letting that happen. And I must wonder what he's thinking watching that game from home, He should have.
I think that was the difference between the two sides. In a game that was very tight and a game that both teams took to each other at times, the difference was mentality. This Spain side don't look ready to be Spain yet, if that makes sense. The expectation was low going into the tournament. They don't have world stars in that lineup necessarily, really. You've got a few players that are notable and some good players, but how many of those players genuinely walk into the France, the England even team? not many of them anymore. And when was the last time you could say that about Spain? They're growing, they're developing a new generation. Players like Ferran Torres, Pedri, a lot of the younger players that are coming through will continue to grow with Spain. And then Italy had Chiellini and Bonucci leading. Leading. And I loved the spirit of the game. It's a completely different rivalry. It's tense, it's fierce, but also it's about good football. It genuinely is. And when it went to penalties, the interaction between Chiellini and Jordi Alba, that's what won the game in my mind. Completely.
It was a bit of a masterstroke of just streetwise mind games on Chiellini's behalf.
100%.
It rattled Alba, I think. You could tell that
he looked so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it completely kind of threw his concentration, and that probably carried into the rest of the team. But I think that's where Italy looked like they were ready to take on the challenge of winning this tournament. They clicked into such a focused state for those penalties that by the time Jorginho steps up for the killer blow, you think to yourself, there's no way he's missing there. Contrast that with Alvaro Morata stepping up for his penalty. Who's going to say he's going to score that? How many people genuinely thought, yeah, he's got a chance? Even his body language said to us,
no, you knew.
I don't fancy this. Yeah. But they picked him for a crucial penalty. And again, Luis Enrique, I love him to bits. I think he's great. But
me too.
He's not the kind of player you want taking the penalty at that stage of the shootout, is he really?
No. And I think the other thing is, it's such a different task facing Unai Simon and Donnarumma. Yeah. Now, Donnarumma's penalty record is unbelievable.
He's just huge. He's massive.
This shootout, what I looked up was Donnarumma had faced 44 penalties and saved 15 of them. He saved over a third of the penalties he's ever faced. Now, a penalty is given because it's an advantage to the attacker. So that's a pretty good return, isn't it? And he's massive. And he looked confident. That confidence that Chiellini had into it of whatever happens here, let's just all love football, seemed to seep through the whole team. And the fact that Italy missed the first one and still went on to win says so much about their character as well. And Mancini is responsible for that. He's changed the mentality of this Italian national side. Like you said, this is the side that didn't qualify for the World Cup and were having a horrible time before Mancini got there. They're unrecognisable now. And when you saw Jorginho being the player to step up for the fifth penalty, I say that Kane's the best penalty taker in the world. Jorginho's got to be close as well. He's so good at it.
And that technique was something else, wasn't it? I was looking at the way the Panenka was always like the mark of a confident penalty taker. And Andrea Pirlo did it on England, didn't he, in the Euros? Yeah. And it was just humiliating and just mesmerising in the same breath. But Jorginho's was similar. The confidence of the man, the cheek of the man to step up and just roll it in, just to seal a final spot. You need that in your team, don't you? Really, that kind of goal, that kind of confidence, and that was all the way through the team. I think you could see not at any point in the game did they look like they were ready to concede. Did they look like they were ready to lose? Did they look like they were even thinking about the game being anything more than a victory? And going into the shootout, I think they obviously played for penalties in the end because Spain were pushing so hard. Yeah. But they knew what was going to happen. They looked at the Spain lineup and thought, there's no one there that's got the character to take this by the scruff of the neck. But you look at the penalty takers that Italy had, even Bonucci going up and taking one. He's got a checkered history of taking penalties recently, but he smashed it home with no fear. So fair play to them.
Before it started, that's the difference, isn't it? Before it started, I was watching this one with Nia's dad, and I said to him straight away, 5 Italy penalty takers would be Locatelli, Bonucci, Belotti, Jorginho, and I can't even think who the other one was. But you called it straight away. It was obvious who they were going to be. You knew these players will take the penalties now. You looked at the Spain side and thought, who do you fancy? Don't know. Couldn't tell. And that was it. You knew that was where the game was going to be won. And they did the right thing. And I'll say again, the two best teams are in the final in this tournament. Yeah. France might have the best individual players. Portugal might have Ronaldo and stuff. But as teams, England and Italy have clicked in this tournament. It's shown. Denmark did too. And that's why they got as far as they did. Massively. Yeah. But other than that, these are the two best sides. And they got to the final on merit. It's not, they snuck by games that they shouldn't have or anything like that. Or, I can't believe they've got there. Last time, did Portugal really seem like they deserved to get to the final even? They drew all 3 of their group games. This tournament, I genuinely believe the 2 best sides have got through, and it will be fascinating to see them play on Sunday. I wish I could appreciate it as a neutral. I'll be honest.
I know, that's the thing. It's a matchup of styles that I think I can't wait to see. But it's going to be the biggest test for England, but it's going to be the biggest test for Italy too.
Yeah.
I want to see Sterling running at the Chiellini and Bonucci stronghold and see how they deal with it, because he's a different prospect altogether for them. I also want to see Insigne try and turn one in past Maguire and Stones, because
I don't want to see that.
No, but it's going to be such a battle to watch, and how they overcome that and how the other players support the defence in each team really will be key. I think the midfield is where it worries me for England. This is me talking about the final now, moving on to sort of what the areas of battle are going to be. But the midfield for me is where I worry for England. What about you?
Oh, definitely. I'm so scared about that, to be honest. Look, it's well documented on this podcast, and with anyone who knows me, my love affair with Italian football and how much I absolutely adore this Italian team. But let me make no qualms about it. I will be over the moon to see England come out on top here. And I honestly, this is where it worries me that they won't. The midfield is so strong for Italy, and not just in terms of their physicality or their attacking intent, but just their way at just controlling a game. And England have been really good at being efficient and controlling games themselves so far. They've not really faced another team who want to control the game like they do. Maybe Germany, I guess. The most that we've kind of seen was from Scotland. Now, no disrespect to Scotland, but Italy are a far, far better side with a much better midfield too. So that worries me. The areas to win are England's best areas, the wide forwards. We've got such a wealth of talent at left and right wing, and Italy's fullbacks have had a good tournament, but Spinazzola is not there. They're very attacking fullbacks. They are there to be got at. You can get in behind those fullbacks. That's where England will exploit Italy, definitely. But
I'm not going to say my fear is when Spain pressed hard, Italy countered really well and with pace. So I'm trying to picture this England team up against that. They're pushing and pushing and pushing in the final third, trying to tiptoe their way through the defence. All of a sudden, they lose possession. Boom, they're straight out of the traps, Italy. The midfield is a gaping hole. Rice is tracking back. Phillips is tracking back. Maguire looks all at sea. That's what I'm seeing in my head as like the worst case scenario.
So he's going to be stuck here, Southgate, on whether to move to the back 5 or not, because I think logically you do, in a weird way, to counter the width that Italy attack with. To keep Insigne boxed in, it means that you can put both Trippier and Walker on Insigne, which I think is going to be a really key battle. However, if you do that, you're probably not going to play 3 forwards, and you lose Saka tracking the fullback. You also then maybe limit how many players you've got in the midfield, and you don't want to lose that battle. I cannot work out what the best system to play is here. I think he'll play 5 at the back. And then I think he'll play Sterling off Kane with probably Mount, Rice and Phillips in midfield, I think. But I would love to see him play 2 wide forwards. I'd love to see him play 2 wingers, because I think that England, if they want to take the game to Italy, they'll play 2 wingers. If they want to try and control it and sneak a 1-0, they'll play 5.
It might be a first half of sussing each other out. So I think you're right. Maybe similar system to how he lined up against Germany. I think he trusts, you talk about wingers, I think he trusts Shaw and Walker to be that role and bomb forward when there's 3 at the back. I think he gives them more license to do that. And the delivery from Shaw has been fantastic this tournament. It just needs to have somebody to aim for. And that's what worries me. If we're so defensive minded in that middle of the park, so busy looking after Jorginho, Verratti, I think I'm worried that there's going to be no person to be on the end of it. I don't want to be long ball merchants either. I like the fact we run with the ball. I like the fact we run at defences. And I think that those players that can do that and run at the defence will be how we unlock them. But it's getting the ball there in the first place that worries me.
And do Italy change their system to defend against England? I don't think they do.
I don't think so. I think they'll stick with what they're used to now. Yeah. And it's been so effective. And I think the way they absorb the pressure from Spain is kind of a flavour of the way they could deal with England, to be honest. Unless they're at their clinical best and take every half chance that they have, England are going to sort of be up against it on the counter massively. And that scares me.
Yeah. I think that the ways that England will win is focusing on the strengths they've got. They've got the better fullbacks. So you'd like to think that they would be able to deal with the wingers and also maybe offer that threat, like you say. They've definitely got the better number 9. Immobile is a very good striker, but he hasn't always been the strongest for Italy. He's not necessarily had the best tournament. And Harry Kane is arguably the best number 9 in the world right now, at least in the top 3. So as long as he gets some sort of service, you'd hope he could break him down. But remember, this is an Italy side that just went on their longest ever run without conceding a goal. I mean, so did England, to be fair. But I'm nervous because it is definitely the biggest test. I would love to speak to a true Italian fan and see if they feel the same. I imagine they do. But they've overcome Spain and Belgium as well. They've not had an easy run at all. So their confidence will be high. And I'm sure England's will. And they're at Wembley. They seem like a great group. Southgate seems to have really got something there. They've got options on options on options. I just hope that those options are clever enough to get over the Italians' defence. I'm so mad.
It's a fascinating.
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, it's like you say. I think if we were neutral, we'd be really drooling at the prospect of this game happening. I think the rest of Europe's probably looking and thinking, what a game we're in for. Us, on the other hand, we're talking about it and going, it's going to be hard. This is, it's the first proper challenge I think Southgate has faced, the first quality I think he's faced as a manager with this set of players, because we've had a nice run to the final. The Germany team we faced wasn't the best Germany team. There was a challenge there, but it was one he navigated fairly comfortably. But yeah, this one tactically is going to be such a puzzle. First half might be a cancellation of each other, but the second half and maybe beyond, who knows, is going to be so tense to watch. So
I can see that massively, by the way. Extra time, maybe even penalties.
I
can
think
see
so.
0-0.
But then it might be a case of who's got the most legs, the most energy in the tank. And I think that might be in England's favour because of the way we've rotated. So we'll see.
We've played a day later than them, though, as well, and also gone to extra time again.
Yeah.
First time
we've gone to extra time. So, yeah, so many question marks. And I think the next pod we do could be an absolute misery fest, or it could be extreme euphoria like we've never seen. So
I think we'll be drunk.
Yeah. I want to finish off just by talking about the Copa America because
my mate,
something I think we would have talked about normally if it wasn't for the Euros, but Argentina, Colombia, what the hell? Emi Martinez has suddenly become this absolute trash talker of a goalkeeper, but then brings it out of nowhere and saves. Well, how many penalties was it? 3 he saved in the shootout?
3 out of 5.
Insane. Yeah. And I think to see him and his story over the last year has been incredible. From Arsenal reserve to the best goalie in the Premier League probably for the last season to potentially winning a Copa America. What a story, mate.
Well, a Villa player will win the Copa America because we've got Douglas Luiz in the Brazil. So that's really nice. But honestly, Emi Martinez, oh my word, one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now. You have to say I'm not saying he is the best, but he's got to be up there. He's now performing on an international stage as well. And fair play to the guy. He deserves it. Seems like a very nice guy. So it was funny seeing him trash talk. But did you see Colombia in the last game when they had their penalty shot? Yeremina took his penalty and then started dancing. Well,
he missed this time, didn't he? So,
Yeah, exactly. If I'm Martinez, I'm talking some trash as well. Yeah, but
don't blame
it was
him.
Very funny. Fair play to him. And nice to see a Villa player doing something on an international stage because Southgate's not going to let him do anything for England, apparently. So may as well let Emi Martinez shine.
No, it was, I think, again, the Copa America final looks like a tasty one, doesn't it?
So, Argentina, Brazil.
Argentina, what a game. And, Messi could finally get an international trophy. Brazil retain it. I think ahead of the World Cup as well, it's a real flavour of who the favourites are. And there's going to be the Confederations Cup with these teams involved as well for the Euros and from Copa America. So that'll be fascinating too. So loads of things to talk about in the future. But I thought I'd throw that one in there and get your reaction because it really piqued my interest seeing that Martinez story, that's for sure.
Yeah, me too, man.
Anyway,
it's been a good summer.
it will be the big one. It will be whatever happens on Sunday, and we'll be just dissecting that. I don't know what kind of mood we'll be in, but until then, mate, try and enjoy it.
Yeah,
I know it's going to be hard. I'm enjoying the moment. I think, like you said, whatever happens, we've got such a moment to reflect on, haven't we?
And also, even not just as England fans, this tournament as a whole, fantastic. Yeah. So much better than I think anyone anticipated it would be. I think we all expected tired legs, a kind of bore fest like the last Euros was a bit rubbish, wasn't it? If we were 100% honest.
Yeah, it was.
This one's been electric. It's been so good, and so many moments. And I'm sure when we do eventually finish the tournament, we'll have some time where we can all reflect on what our favourite parts were. But
I think
I'll say now, I've loved this tournament so far, and the fact that England have got to a final, wow.
Yeah. I think on that note, mate, I think I'm going to stop talking about England and their prospects now, because the moment we're in right now, I'm just singing Sweet Caroline over and over again in my head. And can't stop feeling like positive, and I don't want to talk about Italy anymore. You know, that's still my vibe. I don't want that. Well, I'm just going to enjoy it, soak it in.
I played World in Motion to my Year 7 form group the other day to try and get them to really understand the spirit of it. And they just said, "Sir, what's this old song, man? It's dead." And I was like,
that's what it is.
One day you'll understand.
Yeah. Well, that's a way to make you feel old, isn't it? Blimey. Yeah. Anyway, mate, until then, enjoy it. And thanks for your time, mate. I'll speak to you soon. All right.
Cheers, man. Cheers,